I wake up and I see blue. I see the bright blue eyes of my best friend, but they're filled with tears and I don't understand why. That's when I look around and realize I'm laying in a hospital bed. That's when I remember what I tried to do the night before. They tell me that I've been in and out for about 8 hours. They tell me that I'm now on a 24-hour suicide watch. They tell me that I'm safe. What they don't tell me is that while I was asleep, my friend and my family members could barely hold my hand, and my friend was even pulled off of me for fear of heart failure after the blood loss. What they don't tell me is that this one event will be the cornerstone to when I lose my best friend because everything becomes too much for him. What they don't tell me is that this is another phase of a long fight that I will struggle to talk about and I've been through for too long. My name is Natalie, and I'm not the only one who has tried to take my own life. I live in Utah, the state that has the highest teenage suicide rate in the country. I talk about this because I myself have suffered with severe clinical depression and anxiety for a long time. And I don't want anyone else to go through this while feeling so incredibly alone. I'm a girl who has scars from self-harm, who has thought about suicide more times than I can count, who has been on so many different medications that I have lost track, while at the same time is absolutely terrified of the fact that I cannot be a normal teenage girl without those medications. I've been scared to tell the people closest to me about these struggles for fear that they will look at me differently, for fear that they will fail to see who I really am below all of this, that they will forget about the athlete, the student, the believer, the dreamer, the girl who wants to change the world, and all they will see is the depression and the anxiety. I've struggled to tell my mom, the person I tell everything, because I didn't want her only child to be a disappointment. I didn't tell her for 2 years about the self-harm because I didn't want to disappoint her. I've failed to tell my best friends because I didn't want them to think of me as broken and leave me, because I have lost people because of this. Now, I lay all of this out before you. I show you a piece of my soul that most people haven't seen, because this is so much bigger and more important than just me. Usually, I would say that talking about the struggles that I've been through, what I've done to myself, is one of the hardest things I could tell anyone. For a lot of people, it feels completely impossible to share their struggles, and for that reason, they will take years to get the help that they need. People wait because of the reputation that follows the words mental illness. It's connected to words like crazy and psychotic, connected to the idea that someone is broken and irreparable. A lot of what adds to this is when people say, others have it so much worse than I do. Yes, there are people out there who are struggling with starvation and getting the basic needs that they need, but when I am tumbling down my dark spiral of thoughts and it feels like the world is crashing down around me, it feels extremely significant. Your problems are just as valid and significant to you. Another piece that adds to this reputation is when people don't think it's real, when they say, the teenagers just like me, it's all just hormones for us. Depression has actually been shown in brain scans where the brain activity is actually reduced compared to someone who does not suffer with depression. So you wouldn't tell someone with asthma that it's all in their lungs, or quadriplegic that it's all in their legs or spine. For that reason, we can't tell someone who has depression that it's made up in their mind and that it's all there in their head. One other piece that adds to the stigma is the ignorance that most people have about mental illnesses. Most people don't go through this, so they have no knowledge of the issue. Relative to most areas of medicine, it is such a new field that doctors barely understand the chemicals and what they do to our brain. Because of this lack of research and knowledge, those who are suffering get pushed aside, and their illness is not as recognized as something such as cancer. For me, I don't exactly remember when the symptoms started. what I do remember is how hard it was to talk about what I was going through, what I was thinking and feeling. I remember that the sadness I had just got worse and worse. It was a sadness that resides in my bones without any source. The kind where I would wake up in the mornings, and even if the sun was shining, all I could see was the rain cloud above me. The kind of sadness that follows me around on a day-to-day basis and weighs on my shoulders. It was a kind of sadness that held me back from talking about it for a long time. Now, I may not know all of the kids who have taken their own lives in Utah, but I have had friends who have thought about suicide or even tried to do it. And the thing is, I didn't find out about it until they were at their lowest points. And it was the stigma that held them back from talking about it. So these kids that we've lost, the kids who have committed suicide, they could have changed the world. They could have been our future doctors and leaders. They could have cured depression and schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, or they could have solved the problems in the Middle East peacefully. When I think of all these lives, I think of all of the lost potential that was in their lives and was lost because they couldn't talk about their internal struggles. Now, I understand it is a very hard topic to talk about, but that is why it needs to be acknowledged. Just like we've done with drug awareness, it needs to be talked about to everyone. Children need to be talked to about it by their teachers and parents. Depression, anxiety, and self-harm are important to talk about. In schools, just talking about bullying isn't always enough because often it isn't others that makes us feel so terribly, it's ourselves. Mental illness needs to be taken just as seriously as every other illness. As a society, we need to be more accepting to those going through these struggles. Because depression isn't a straightforward response to a bad situation. Depression just is, like the weather. Please try to understand the situation, the blacklessness, the hopelessness, and the loneliness that someone is going through. Regardless of how bright the day is, how promising their future is, or how many friends they have, be there for them when they need it. Don't tell them just to think happy thoughts. Look for those signs of self-harm. And remember, you have no idea what battles someone is fighting on their own. I understand that it can be extremely hard to be the friend or family member to someone who is going through something like depression, but it is one of the kindest and most impactful things that you can do for them. And for those of you who are going through any of these struggles, please know that you are not alone. There are people there who want to get you back to feeling as good as possible. People like me who will do anything to make that possible. There is help and hope.